Welcome back. I am happy to introduce our next presenter. Joe Shonk is a systems engineer at Think Client Computing and a CTP, and I think he is rocking and ready to go. Are you ready, Joe?
I am. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep. I'm going to send you the screen right now. There you go.
All right. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about IP reputation. When I was asked to participate in this particular webinar a couple months ago, it was told it was going to be security related, and the first thing that kind of just popped in my head, security related, that was IP reputation. And I don't know why it popped to the front of the head. I saw a couple demos of it at Synergy and the previous year when it first came out, and I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. So when asked to do this, I thought this would be a great opportunity to dig a little deeper into IP reputation and kind of give you what I've discovered so far and what I think it would be useful and so forth. So when I put together the abstract, I did include NMAS. Come to find out, I decided to use version 12 of the NetScaler firmware, and there are some issues with the app firewall built-in rules and stuff for sending that data to NMAS. So we're just going to go ahead and maybe cut out the NMAS portion for today. We could come back around a later date when some of those issues are resolved and go from there. So as Stephanie said, I'm Joe Shonk. I work with Mr. Greenberg and some other fine folks over at Think Client Computing. I am a member of the Phoenix Cuds. It may have shown on there being a leader, but we've got 3 leaders for the Phoenix Metro Center area, so they get more than enough coverage for that. We'll actually have an event next Friday. If you're in Phoenix, ping me, ping Steve, ping Roy, ping David. We'd love to have you come. I'll be speaking a little bit about the Citrix Cloud. We're doing a case study with a customer of ours that we just did the Citrix Cloud in Azure instance with them, and we're going to be sharing some of that stuff next week. So I also want to give a little bit of credit to what credit's due. I had somebody else help me a little bit with this presentation. His name is Sheldon. He is a junior consultant with my company. And while I was putting this presentation together, he would just constantly jump up on my lap and check it out, make sure things were going good, putting the right information, all that kind of stuff. So this is my little buddy here, and so I'm going to give him a little bit of credit. So what is IP reputation? So let's go ahead and start with what is reputation. So if you were to go to a website, say like PayPal.com, right? What's the first thing you think in your head? Somebody said, hey, I'm going to buy some services online. They want to send me to PayPal to pay for it. You think, okay, I can do that. I'm comfortable with giving PayPal my credit card information and using PayPal as a service to pay for those particular goods. So in your mind, PayPal has a reputation, at least to you. It's like, okay, you either have a good experience with PayPal or a bad experience with PayPal. But PayPal has a reputation. Now, if you were going to buy goods and services online and somebody decided, hey, I want you to go to www.givemeallyourmoney.com, you're like, what is that? That sounds kind of fishy, right? So this particular website, I don't even know if it exists, but it doesn't have a reputation. Or in your mind, it's like, wait a minute, you're already kind of giving it a negative impression. It doesn't sound right. It's not something that's familiar to you, right? So we can take this reputation, we can apply it to kind of like the IP world. If somebody gave you an IP address, a lot of us system engineers use IP addresses. We're familiar with them. We see an IP address like this, yeah, it's like, okay, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have any context behind it. If I was going to have someone from this particular address come and consume one of my services, I don't know anything about them. They could be a good person, they could be a bad person. We don't know what's on the other end of the particular endpoint. If somebody gave you this address, you probably think, oh wait, that's a private IP address. We know a little bit more about this address. We know that it's a private address. We know it's probably a gateway within the network, and we probably know we can trust that particular address because if we're inside somebody's network and we see that, we kind of get a good feeling about that. Now, maybe a public address like this, most of you, if you've used this is a Google's DNS, for those that don't know what this particular address is. If you were to consume a service on the internet, would you just pick any randomly set up DNS service and basically trust that? You know, or are you going to go with something that's more reputable? Google is a reputable company, so if you were going to use Google DNS, it's like, okay, I'm going to go with something reputable. So what if we could take this idea of a reputation and apply it to IP addresses and say, hey, I want people coming into my network. I want people coming into my Zen app and Zen desktop, my Zen mobile, my Exchange servers, my SMTP traffic. I want to prevent those people from coming in that don't necessarily belong into my network. I want to see what kind of reputation this particular source address has. There are a few online services, which Bright Cloud is one of them. They've set up services and they've set up these networks of millions of different sensors around the internet that's looking for key traffic patterns, anything that can kind of tell them what kind of traffic is flowing across the internet, what's the source IP address, what's the destination IP address, just collecting all that data, bringing it in-house, and basically compiling that data and generating a risk score from it, right? So they can see, hey, I see a lot of torrent activity or a lot of known bot activity coming from this particular IP address. I'm going to take that sensor data and I'm going to send that to Bright Cloud. The Bright Cloud's going to compile that data and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to give this a higher risk score. And then you can also categorize this, like what type of risk. Is it somebody that's running a scanner? Is it a DOS type? Has the IP been known for DOS? Has it been known for propagating viruses or spam? Is it a proxy server? I'm going to give a little bit demo with the proxy and the torrent proxy. It's kind of an easier way of testing this. It's not really a good way to test your implementation, but this is a good one. So why use IP reputation? So why let traffic that's known to be harmful into your network? Why let your internal servers deal with bogus traffic? Why not filter that stuff before they even reach the internal pieces of the network? So Citrix has a product, NetScaler. It does require NetScaler Platinum. Starting with version 11 and up, you can actually use IP reputation. If you want to use security insights with that NMAS integration I was talking about, you do need to have 11.1. However, some issues with 12.0, so I'm not going to necessarily worry about that. What you get with the Platinum edition of the NetScaler is you get a free subscription to the WebRoot Bright Cloud service. So basically, that's the dynamic database that's collecting and analyzing and compiling all that data and ranking it. And then basically, when you initially set up the NetScaler, it's going to download the database, and then it's going to send deltas. Every 5 minutes, you're going to get updates. And all that stuff, that basic online subscription is free with the NetScaler. Databases, once the database is loaded onto the NetScaler, it's there. So if you disable the feature and then re-enable it, the database persists. It doesn't go away until you actually go in and remove the database from the appliance. You can set up responders, rewrite rules, and the app firewall as mechanism for dealing with malicious data. So if you have somebody trying to come in, you can connect a responder or any one of these rules to your application, your load balance VIP, and there's a couple filters that are added. the client IP source is the IP malicious, or if you want to, you can actually break that down into these different categories here. So you have multiple categories you can define as part of. You only want to filter out DOS attacks, or you only want to filter out spam, or you can mix and match which of these rules that you want to use. So instead of going through more PowerPoint, I'm going to go over a little bit of a demo here. As I set up a few, if I can get out of this, there we go. I set up a few web servers in our data center last night, and I also set up an instance in AWS. So if I go to the website, I have a load balancer, NetScaler front ending a web service. And if I go to this address, 69.160.39.131, I get my website, right? So I want to create, if I want to set up the NetScaler portion of it's actually fairly easy. Let's just get through that. To configure reputation, all you got to do is turn it on. Simple as that. If you have a proxy server, you can come down to the security, reputation, and input your proxy server. So there's really nothing that you have to do from that perspective. All you have to do is create the actual rules that you want to use to do that. So if I would create a responder, I can go in the App Expert, create an action. I was doing a simple redirect. So I could say demo, responder, action, and then I would let's do this. Let's just do redirected HTTPS to the.citrix.com. Right, I get to redirect it to a completely different website. Now, when we create our policy, so we're going to use demo responder policy. We're going to use our action to redirect, and we can use expression editors. Very simple: client, IP, source, and then here's where we will activate IP reputation test, right? So we can just say, is it just malicious in general, or do we want to filter it down? So let's just go ahead and say malicious. Go ahead and click on done, create, and we're going to go ahead and bind that to. I'm not liking this GUI. It's still a lot faster than 11, but let's go ahead and with our policies, go ahead and add a responder policy. Select it, find it. Now we have a responder policy. Now, if we go back here, we still get to our website. It's not going to redirect us yet, because if I were to take the IP address that I'm currently connected to, I'm going to have a high risk, not a high risk, a low risk score. So I'm going to it's not going to redirect me because I'm not coming from a malicious address. Now, if I use something like a torrent, like a Tor browser, which is kind of an anonymous browsing. Again, I'm running this in an AWS instance because I really don't want to run this on my personal machine. It takes a minute for it to load. And what Tor is going to do is the bright cloud actually flags that as a high threat if you're coming from a Tor browser. Okay, there we go. So a test for network settings. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the actual IP address that Tor browser is going to be used as the source address. And this is a simple way I can test this this IP address. So I can go to Bright Cloud and I can see whether this IP is good, and in this case it is. So if you're going to use this for testing, you need to keep in mind you want to make sure that if you're going to test against your NetScaler, that you are coming from one that's been flagged already. So I'm just going to bring up a new identity. It may take a couple times to get an address that's been flagged. Last night I was getting them all the time. Earlier this morning, it was every couple one. So again, it's a like BitTorrent in a way, but for network browsing. And so you have hundreds, if not millions, of endpoints that it can actually use as a source point. So again, it's a never-ending fight between what's good and what's bad. Oh, that's not that bad. So off this one. Copy. I've been putting the wrong addresses in, haven't I? There we go. So now we have an address that's been flagged for spam proxy and a torrent proxy. So I'm going to go back and actually from this browser, if I do it from my Chrome, it's going to go out my AW instance, and I'm just going to try to go to this address here, the 69 160 39, and connect. See what happens. If everything's working, we should get redirected to citrix.com. Trying. There we go. And we got redirected. What you may want to do instead of redirecting people to Citrix, probably not the best way to do it, is you could actually just drop or reset the TCP connections for those users or those particular requests coming in. So for you guys, if you guys want to try this out, I wouldn't recommend trying to do the Bright Cloud URL lookup what's inside the Tor browser, because this thing will more often than not break. It won't let you. Again, it's trying to protect itself from a malicious IP address. So I would recommend having a different browser, have it open, grab your Tor IP, plug it in there, or if you got a malicious one or a high flag IP address, then go ahead and test your NetScalers. So that's pretty much what I have for you today. I could probably take a few questions. I don't know how deep we could go in with the questions.
We can take a couple of questions if you guys have any, please type them into the chat window.
And this site's pretty cool because when you think of an IP address, right, you have an IP address that's usually associated to a DNS name or multiple DNS aliases, and that's what you really think about an IP address. But there's more to an IP address than just the numbers. If you look, you can see where the IP address is located, the latitude, longitude, what country, what carrier owns it, who the organization is that actually owns that particular IP address. There's a lot of information you can gather about just an IP address. And then we're just adding on to what kind of traffic patterns have we seen from this particular IP address. If you
Joe, I have a question for you if you're ready.
Oh, go for it.
So Jonathan is asking, where does the NetScaler get the scope of IP addresses and how often does it get updated?
Where the database is located?
Maybe. It says, where does the NetScaler get the scope of IP addresses and how often does it get updated? So
Citrix Bright Cloud is a company from Webroot. Citrix actually has a subscription with Bright Cloud. So your NetScaler is actually connecting to Bright Cloud, to an API at brightcloud.com, and it's actually downloading the database. And then the database is actually updated every 5 minutes. And you're not downloading the entire database every 5 minutes. You're just downloading what changed between your initial database load and what changed in that since the last update.
Okay. We have, how big is the IP reputation download every 5 minutes?
Yeah, as far as file size, I don't know. But doing the deltas, I can look, but it'll take a few minutes to do that, and I don't know if we have enough time to dig into that deep. But I did post in here where that database is located. So if we look at in the PowerPoint, the database location is here, and there's also a log under var log. There's an iprep.log file that you can look to see if you're getting your updates. One of the mistakes I made is the classic mistake that you make is your NetScaler needs to be able to resolve through the API for brightcloud.com. So if you don't have your DNS set, you won't be able to get it. I had a different address I thought was a DNS server. It showed up, but I wasn't getting any name resolution. So for first half hour, I'm scratching my head trying to figure out why my IP reputation rules are not working. Come to find out, I can't reach the server, so I put a different DNS server, and everything functioned from there. Worked from there.
All right. We have a lot more questions coming in, but I think that what I'll have to do is take these and get these to you afterwards, Joe. And
yeah,
okay, we'll do that. I'll get you these questions, and like I said before, we'll send all these out. You'll get the links to all of this stuff. All right, Joe. If you had any closing thoughts, or are you ready to kick it off?
Like I said, it was an experiment, something I didn't know, something that looked pretty cool, so I decided to dive into it. It's actually very, very easy in the respect that you turn it on, you just need a couple rules, and it makes me wonder why this isn't a little bit more popular and why everybody's not doing it. I mean, if you don't have Platinum, I get it, but if you have a Platinum edition, NetScaler, VPX, FDX, whatever, you're entitled to use a particular feature. It's not difficult to use. It's actually fairly easy. If you needed additional flexibility, you can create additional data sets to block and whitelist things that are flagged incorrectly, or an IP is bad, and you can get pretty creative with the different expressions and the data sets and stuff like that. So a little more technical, but again, very easy to set up, very easy to work with. It's just like not enough people know about it yet or realize how easy it is to use. And I think it's something that we all should start thinking about using.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. All right, guys. Next, we have Thorsten Rode. He is going to be talking to us about better authentication made easy with MFA and CAPTCHA. And he is going to start that in the next few minutes at around 3:40. So we will be right back. Please stick with us. We'll see you in just a few.